Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Dance Teacher Pep Talk. I am your host, Amanda, and I am so glad you are here. This is a space for dance teachers and anyone interested in teaching dance who is looking for motivation and fresh ideas. As teachers, we spend our days motivating and giving pep talks to our students, and now this podcast is a pep talk just for you. We hope that it helps to ignite new ideas and even work through some deep dance-related thoughts before you head into the studio. Thank you for your support, and now let's get into today's episode. Hi, everybody, and welcome to Dance Teacher Pep Talk. If you're new here, I am so excited that you have found this space. And if you are returning, thank you so much for your continued support and listens. Today's episode is going to be sort of a tip episode based on an exercise that I did in my classes last night. And when I did them, I wasn't really planning it, to be honest, not in this degree at least, but it just kind of unfolded as a lesson right in front of my eyes. And I thought, wow, this is really important. This is really important to share. And I feel like so many of us can benefit from this. And if you're listening to this in real time, next week is Halloween, and for a lot of us, we may tend to do different activities, different music, anything like that geared towards Halloween. Some of us might have costume weeks at our studios, things like that. And so when we're looking for new ideas of things to bring in, I thought this might be a great time to share this tip with you all. And this is an improv tip. And before you switch the episode, if you're not like a contemporary or modern teacher, I want this improv episode to be about improv in the classes that don't typically have improv. So if you're like, oh, I don't teach improv, this is not for me, you should definitely stick around because that is the whole point of today's tip. So giving a little bit of background for myself on improv, the time that I was growing up in dance as a high school, middle school student, contemporary wasn't even a subject that we saw at the studio. It wasn't a genre yet at competitions. Maybe it was starting to develop a little bit, but it was not seen in that learning atmosphere at those ages. So for me, the first time that I was introduced to improvisation wasn't until I was in college. And, not to say that I didn't do that growing up because, freeze dance, we would do freeze dance and things like that. Or we would kind of have our moments where we maybe added a little bit of our own movement to the beginning of a combination or something like that in lyrical. But we didn't have focused toolbox items when it came to improv. Maybe here and there and a little bit in our modern class, but really, truly, I don't feel that it came to be a bigger topic in my area, at least until the 2010s. And so when we're thinking about that, I remember the first time doing improv, feeling very nervous, feeling very self-conscious. And I do feel like this is a common feeling for so many that are trying it out. But for those that have been, involved in improv or, have practiced improv from a young age, say age 6, I find that self-consciousness is not always present. It does shift and change through the ages, I feel, especially when we get into those ages where we begin caring more about what others think or what we perceive others to think. We start to get in a little bit more of our headspace on that. But for the most part, I've noticed a huge difference between teaching it young and then the self-conscious or, awareness, the confidence that comes with it from practice. And so this got me thinking with jazz, because I don't really improv in my jazz classes very often, maybe at the beginning of the combination or at the end of the combination if we're doing that. But a lot of the time my class is really focused on technical skills. And then, here and there we add combination, every so many weeks, just to work with that element and work with choreography and sequencing. So last night, like I said, I just decided, we're going to do some jazz improv tonight. And immediately the energy was oh no, or almost like a fear energy. And I was so glad that happened. Not because I was like looking to make them nervous or anything like that. It was a realization for me as a teacher that this is uncomfortable. And the only way we're going to get it to that state of being comfortable or more tolerable is to put it into practice, to model it, and to provide tools to help them feel more confident in this. And so, like I said, if you say you're teaching ballet, say you're teaching tap, all these genres where we're not usually used to having improv thrown into class, I highly recommend giving it a try. And so going back into the jazz, I'm going to be speaking specifically about jazz because that was the class that I was teaching this in. But so often when we are looking at dance in the real world, dance that's happening in commercials, dance that's happening on the stage, there's elements where we need to have confidence when it comes to improving or bringing ourselves into the style. If I had asked my students in contemporary class to improv, it would be like a no-brainer. There would be no moans and groans. It would be like, all right, let's do this. And in fact, it's one of the most loved parts of class because it's the time where they get to explore their own style. But now here in jazz, this is very concerning. And I asked them why. I said, let's talk about this first. Why do you have this reaction? What is it that is making you feel like, oh no, I don't want to do this? A couple of the responses were that it's fast, or I can't think of the steps quick enough in my mind for my body to do them within the improv, and things like that. And so I said, okay, let's stop now and talk about what makes contemporary improv comfortable for you. And some of the comments were I just allow the music to guide me, or I just can move without thought. And I said, well, let's just try this out first. Let's take what you know from contemporary improv, and I'm going to put on some music, and I just want you to go from there. And the music, was jazz-based styles. And it really showed how we can build the comfort from that. We can build the comfort from the tools that we already have. And so it really got me thinking, if we're not practicing jazz improv, regardless of the amount of tools that we have in other subjects, we are really doing a disservice for our students, because this is a great space for them to find themselves in the style of jazz with their own, their own movements, their own thoughts, their own feelings of how the music helps to guide them to move, just as they said for contemporary. And so when we did this, because it was, Halloween's coming up, I did it Halloween specific. So I want you to make sure that you're following my Instagram page at Dance Teacher Pep Talk, because tomorrow on my Instagram, I'm going to be putting up the exercise that I did specific for this to help. Because what I ended up doing was, yes, it was Halloween themed, but we did rounds with categories, and I'll have suggested music and everything like that. But really just to show how jazz as a huge genre spans across many different styles and many different, types of jazz, and how we can improv within all those styles. So make sure you're checking that out tomorrow. I will be posting that. So back to the improv. It really got me thinking this too. This was an analogy that came up for myself, is that if I were to say I was wanting to take a workout class or an exercise class, a fitness class, and I went to go sign up. For me, if Pilates was on the schedule, I would, without thought, boom, there I am. I'm confident in it. I am able to do it because I have practiced. I am knowledgeable of what Pilates is, what to expect out of it. So no questions. But if on that schedule, there was a spin or a cycling class, I would be oh my gosh, I don't know about this. I don't feel comfortable with this, because I don't practice that, because it is not something that I do very often. So with this analogy to improv, how can we expect our students to improv, to add their moment in the beginning or end of the combination, if we are not providing the tools and the time to practice it? And what we noticed at the end of the exercise was there was one major missing component. All the movement was there, ideas were there. It may have taken a little bit more to develop because it was newer, it was fresher, but there was one missing element. And could you guess maybe what it was? The missing element was confidence. And we talked about the difference between confidence and performance emotion, because when we are emoting,
sometimes, always actually emoting is connecting with your performance, but a lot of the time the emotion is not going to read if there isn't confidence and truth and genuine quality behind that. So before we even can get to what the emotion is, we have to put confidence on. And when we're improving, and I notice this a lot in contemporary, is that a lot of the energy becomes inward. We are thinking, even our eyes kind of may cast downward because we are thinking so much about what we're doing, or we're allowing our bodies just to flow. I shouldn't say that we're thinking about so much what we're doing, but more so like we're in our bubble. We're letting ourselves flow. And in contemporary, it works because we can go into this internal world. But in jazz, that internal world doesn't always make sense for the entirety of the improv. And so you can really notice right away that like if we're going into that internal bubble, it immediately reads as I am not confident to show you who I am in this style. And so just like anything, to build confidence, we need to practice. We need to get ourselves to a place where we are comfortable with what we're doing. And, I always love that quote, change doesn't happen when you're comfortable, or it's, something like being uncomfortable or discomfort is what pushes you to that next level because it's new. You haven't had that experience yet. But if we stay in the comfort zone, that's where we're going to be. Because in order to get out of that comfort zone, you do need to face some discomfort. And so with jazz and the improv, like I said, adding this into our classes, because I am teaching a technique focused class, I might not have time every single week to add improv, but seeing how important it is and seeing the reaction to it last night, it made me realize what is 2 or 3 minutes at a class to add a little bit of improv in weekly. So we're getting that practice, or taking the time to do a little bit more of a concentrated activity where we're getting that time. And so I'll be putting that activity that I did on my Instagram. But with that time, with that practice, we will grow in confidence. And I'm hoping that by the end of the year, when I say it's time for improv, instead of going, oh, okay, it will be more of an excitement, just as I see within contemporary classes. And so if you're teaching tap, this could be a great idea too, to incorporate different rhythm sounds, finding your own personal style within what you're doing as an improv exercise. In ballet, like maybe we always are doing our adagio, but maybe that one day you want them to improv the adagio for themselves or something, so that it's not that we're changing up our classes every single week, but we're pulling in these ideas to start to develop this concept. Because everything these days, I really do feel, is so much about your individuality and what you bring and what you have. And that is what we're looking for, the individual. And yes, we're looking at how the individual is going to match and map with others. But, even in the industry today, it's like, how many Instagram followers do you have? Who is following you? And a lot of the time, like when I follow someone, dance related or not, it's because something about them as an individual is what grabs me. Something about how they share their content is what grabs me. Because like I could see all these different like aesthetic accounts where like they have all these beautiful pictures, all these things, but like if I am not drawn to the person that is posting, I'm missing out on a part of that. So just really thinking about that in the sense of the dance world too. Like when we're following these dancers, there's something about them that is the reason why we're following, because a lot of them can do all the same movements. A lot of them have these wow factor things going on, but it's that individualization that they have, their identity. And so by helping our students with improv, we are also helping to grow this. We are helping them to find this for themselves, because you're not going to create individuality by just giving the same material every time to every student in the same manner every way. There's ways that we can open up these ideas of how to grow as people, grow as a person. And so, yes, this episode was all about improv, but it has a much deeper meaning behind it. And so I'm hoping that this episode today is inspiring you to try out some of these ideas in your own classes, no matter what style of dance it is that you teach. And if you enjoyed today's episode and you feel called to share it with a friend or colleague, please do. Make sure to follow my Instagram at Dance Teacher Pep Talk. And I can't wait to put up the Halloween improv exercise that I did because it was a lot of fun. It was very eye-opening, and I think at the end of the day, we found success within it and also the means of how we're moving forward with our improv in styles that are not as comfortable for us when it comes to improv. So I want to thank you all so much for being here. Thank you all for your support and listens. And don't forget to follow us on your podcast platform of choice because that will help you to know when new episodes drop. And I hope you all have a great rest of your week ahead.